Welcome to the Yoga Podcast, Keeping It Real, with your host, Claudia Azula Altucher.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Yoga Podcast. I am very happy today to have Laruga with me, who was very hard to pin down because the woman travels everywhere teaching yoga. She started practicing in 1996 with a desire to study yoga philosophy, but it wasn't until she stumbled upon Ashtanga yoga that she fully immersed herself into a devoted practice, and that was 2 years later in 1998. And since then, she's been practicing with the late Sri K. Patavi Joyce of Ashtanga Yoga, the man himself, and now also with his grandson, Sharath Joyce, in Mysore, India, where she visits all the time. Every time I'm there, I see her. She's constantly there. She is also a level 2 authorized teacher from Mysore, India, which is an incredible accomplishment. And she heads the Mysore program at Yogayama in Stockholm, Sweden. And she teaches workshops and retreats internationally. You can go to Laruga Yoga and you'll see all her schedule and where she is. She may be coming near you if you're lucky. So Laruga, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me ask you something. It's 4 p.m. in Stockholm. So I'm wondering, what did you do today?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, my usual schedule is I'll first thing in the morning I practice. I'll do my practice, which is quite early.
What is quite early?
My alarm goes off at around 2:45.
Oh my goodness.
But that doesn't mean that I necessarily get up right away. It depends on, sometimes I hit snooze a few times, to be perfectly honest.
Well, you're very allowed. Anyone who puts the clock at 2:45 is allowed to snooze it in my world.
Yeah, sometimes I need a little bit of a buffer. Sometimes I do hop out of bed right away, but sometimes it's a good way for me to kind of segue myself out of bed.
So what time do you go to bed then?
In a perfect world, 8 o'clock. That doesn't always happen. Usually I really start winding down between eight or 9. But the best time for me to be in bed is before 8:30, really.
Yeah, you need that. For me too, only I don't wake up that early. That's very impressive to me.
Yeah, that's important. So,
and then what did you do?
I will do my practice. Then it's like I have to very quickly kind of shower and get ready to head to the studio to teach. So, my commute isn't too bad. It's about, from door to door, it's maybe about 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Do you go by train, I guess, or?
Yeah, 20, 25 minutes, really, actually. So, I catch a train into the city center and make my way to Yogayama to teach. So I start around a little after 6:30 is when I start teaching. So my boyfriend leaves actually earlier to open the doors. He opens the doors at the studio at 6 a.m. So some students like to arrive before I arrive to get started.
Right, yeah.
So he's a really big help for me because then it allows me to have some breathing room to do my practice, because I will not wake up at 2 or 1 o'clock to do my practice.
No, that would be going Sharath, going a little he has to because he opens at 4, but yeah. So your boyfriend is very into Ashtanga yoga as well. In fact, you met him in Mysore, is that right?
Yeah, I did. I met him in Mysore in 2009, and so we both have this mutual passion or dedication for the practice, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But, yoga doesn't necessarily consume our life and conversation day to day, but it really, we kind of just have this steady acknowledgement of that. It's something that we do daily.
Right.
We support each other's process, and also he supports my teaching, and I also support his practice and also his teaching. He teaches a little bit, not nearly as much because he has another full-time job.
Oh, wow.
But it's a great thing to share together. So.
Yeah, of course. And so you teach from 6:30 or so until what time?
Till 10.
Ah, okay. Mysore, where you're adjusting everybody depending on the level they're at.
Yes, yes. So.
And what happens after 10?
So, oh gosh, it could be so many things. Sometimes I have meetings and different things that have to do with teaching at Yoga Yama. Other times it's a matter of me, I'll come back home, I'll eat something, because usually after practice, I really don't have time to eat, and actually I don't like to really eat too much before teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of really like my first meal after teaching. So I definitely try to have something to eat. And then I do need to rest and wind down after teaching.
Of course, of course.
So,
And, it's interesting what you said right there. And I find this, the more I practice, I've been practicing daily nonstop since 2007, even though I started in '05. Like there is always a transition between starting Ashtanga. But I find the more I practice, the less I want to eat until late in the day. Seems to be, the practice seems to generate that.
yeah, I find it really interesting. But I have gone through different cycles with that, where you're kind of in the practice in a way where it seems like the appetite drops, or you want to eat later. But then I've also gone through some cycles too, where it's like it seems like my body wants food earlier in the day, or the metabolism or my appetite has increased. It's, sometimes it waxes and wanes, which I find kind of interesting as well.
Well, maybe I'll experience that when I get to higher levels. I am only in like that primary, little bit of intermediate series. Maybe when I get to the ultra strong handstands and balances poses that you have amazing photos of, maybe then my appetite will change.
Well, I mean, that's still a high level. I think just daily practice and consistency, and that's an advanced practice too. I don't know if it's always these other, more advanced poses all the time. But
you talked recently, you said that you had been experiencing, I think I heard this in an interview, a little bit of fatigue during a period of your practice. And yeah,
I did. So yeah, like I just, it was a little bit like I kind of just, I don't know if the right term would be kind of hitting a wall a little bit. I mean, I think there are several factors going into it. One thing is like just adapting to living in Sweden.
right.
So when I first moved, it's kind of like everything is new, and like, the body and everything is just kind of like calibrating to being to a new place. But
Where were you living before Sweden?
I was in the Midwest. I was in Columbus, Ohio.
Where you were born?
No. I actually was born in South Carolina.
Oh, you were born in South Carolina. Oh.
I was born, but I didn't stay there for long. So when my sister was born, we're only 13 months apart.
Oh.
So that's a quick turnover.
Yeah, very quick.
When she was born, then we moved away from South Carolina, and we moved to Illinois, where I grew up in a small town called Edwardsville that's like in the southern part of the state, so not close to Chicago. Like every time I bring up the state Illinois, everyone thinks, oh, you were from Chicago, which is actually where my dad is from originally. So I grew up there until about, the time that I graduated high school. And then, I ended up in Columbus, Ohio when I went to university there at Ohio State.
What did you study in university?
It's really so, I changed my major like four or five times, which is really, but I graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in human ecology with a focus on fashion merchandising.
Wow. And then from that to yoga teacher.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was, um, yeah, I think too, because of the fact that I changed my major so many times, I was just a little bit confused on where to go.
Right.
You know,
But you started yoga really, really early. So you were practicing already by this time.
yeah, and I wasn't, I can't say that I was like super, super serious, but I was really, so when I first discovered yoga, and actually before I even started practicing asana, I was really interested in spirituality,
Hmm.
philosophy. I was even dabbling in New Age thought. I was reading about meditation. I was reading about Buddhism. Anything I get my hands on when it came to just spirituality, different views of thought. And through that investigation, I came across that's when I came across Ashtanga yoga, like the 8 limbs.
Hmm.
So before even understanding that there's like an asana practice called Ashtanga yoga. So it was just like I had all this information, and then yoga just really sparked my interest. I just love this. Uh, I don't know. It just seems so holistic in a way where it's like it was about self investigation and about practice and self reflection
Mm.
and just being guided within and all these things. It really spoke to me versus kind of like more religious establishment kind of telling you from the outside, "Oh, follow these rules, do this, do that." Um, the whole path of yoga kind of just something, there was something in it that I acknowledged, that I recognized, that kind of sparked something within me. And and then to find asana practice, which was actually the tool of using the body to further this investigation, just really excited me. I just thought joining, the use of the body with the mind and the spirit, I just felt like that was so amazing.
Yeah. And I especially find that interesting, particularly with Ashtanga yoga, because it's a type of the asana in the lineage of Patavi Jois is so challenging. They take the asana part so seriously and the
Yeah.
breathing that it really puts you in touch with the body right away. You start feeling that transformation in the body immediately, and so the questions begin to come because it's so intense.
Mm, most definitely. Yeah, this gateway of using the breath and the body. So breathing consciously and and just moving and I feel like in the Ashtanga yoga practice, yeah, there is an intensity, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be intense. Sometimes we can add on layers of intensity that don't necessarily have to be there. But um, there's something about this asana practice where you're kind of uniting breath and movement, and you're using the body as a tool where it's just you connect to all the sheaths of your body in a way where it's not just physical. It's
Mm.
like you feel the mental sheath, you feel the subtle sheath, and all of these just kind of like it's like all of a sudden you kind of connect to it. And I remember like early on when I was practicing, I didn't really understand what that was like.
Hmm.
But then later when you kind of do some reading and you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, that's kind of something that I was experiencing or connecting to. But I will tell you, like my first start with asana practice, I was doing other forms, which I really enjoyed, like kind of softer forms or
Right.
a little bit more like Iyengar type of inspired practices. Um, but when I found Ashtanga yoga, it was like, I don't know, it was just like the clouds parted, the angels sang. I don't know. Right away, I just had such a strong connection to it, even though it was very challenging. It
Yes.
wasn't like it just, everything just was like so easy, but I just, there was something to it that just ran a little bit deeper inside,
Mm.
um, that I hadn't really experienced before.
And so you're in Columbus and you're in college and you're practicing and how do you go from there? What happened that takes you to Stockholm?
Well, that, well, that happened. There was many years between that till now, when I moved. Um, after I graduated from college, I was, working in various different, uh, I had various different jobs, kind of figuring out where to take my career, was kind of like an illusion I bought into.
Mm.
And
That
it,
is so true, you're saying there, because we all buy into that. We have to have a career. And all along, the yoga was like pulling you in more and more.
yes, most definitely. And I think because I was maintaining a daily practice through all this time of like kind of trying to investigate, where I'm going to take my career and all this stuff. But I really feel like the yoga is what kept me really sane. What probably allowed me to do it longer than I had, in a way. Like, I don't know, like it just kept me rooted within something. But also, I think too, when you kind of go down a certain path, or you go down the path of yoga, it's like there's a point too where you just can't be inauthentic anymore.
Right.
It kind of kills you. So,
It
um,
kills you. What do you mean? It kills you? Because I mean, you just said you just dropped on me a couple of like, and you even said once I had some new life changing moments that made me question things, and I felt my whole foundation was shaking a bit. I wonder if that was perhaps at this time that you were feeling that.
yeah, but I think, my foundation was really shaken much earlier, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
So in my younger life, I really had um, there were a few events in my life that really made me question a lot of things. I think that is why I started to investigate spirituality, at a young age. So, because that kind of started in high school. Um,
Can you share with us any of these things that happened, or I mean,
Well, yeah, it's kind of a touchy subject for me. I did experience an abusive period in my life. Uh,
abusive? You said?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay.
So, and it really had a way of, I don't know, it was almost like there was a Laruga before and then there was a Laruga after.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it really shook up a lot of things within me. And even to this day, it's something that I think still has an effect. But I think, these defining moments happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I can kind of see the divine, you know, intelligence behind all of that. So I can't really, stand here and say, oh, I'm so bitter about it. That's not really, um, I can see how there was a reason for why everything unfolded in the way that it did.
Right.
So, I know like some kids, or young people, they act out in other ways. Like maybe they experiment with drugs, or maybe they, find other ways of escape, which I think that's, I'm not even saying that's a bad way. Sometimes people have to go that route to find themselves. I don't really judge that at all. But for me, for whatever reason, I was looking in another direction. I kind of was asking these deeper questions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what sparked my interest just in spirituality, or just higher states of consciousness, even though, maybe I wasn't even ready for all, all of that stuff, but that
Right.
kind of
But
ignited that as well.
but you
So,
used the word "it kills you," which to me
yeah.
means a deep transformation.
Mm,
Um, so something happened, and it's very common among women to experience. I have experienced it myself, so it's a common theme as the world awakens to the power of women. I think, and it transformed you because you chose this way. As you said, there was a before Laruga and now and after Laruga.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the biggest difference between the before and the after?
Well, if I'm talking about this certain period in my life, um, I will say something kind of died that I kind of have been trying to awaken again.
Mm.
Like that is, um, and I'm not saying, oh, it's not totally gone, but I think that was when something like this happens in your young life, it really can just,
Shut you down?
oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I know. It's like you go numb, or you think nothing is, no one cares.
Yeah, it's really, I don't even, it's a hard thing to explain. It's a very painful thing to wrap my head around at times, but um, yeah, that I really felt there was a part of me that died that I've been trying to reawaken.
Mm.
And I know many people have gone through this. Many people have, this is not something that's unique to me. And so that, and again, that's been part of my journey. Again,
Right.
because what I will say too is this type of thing really put a lot of doubt within me. So so much doubt within myself on a deep level, even though I can also feel my power at times, like, so all of a sudden you kind of find that like, oh, it's like you can really manifest things, you can really move things through in your life, but then also there's this deep sense of doubt that that has really been the big thing that kind of took the place of this part that kind of died within me.
Right.
So, the yoga practice has kind of helped to cultivate me to kind of work with this doubt within myself. I can't say that it's totally gone. It's not. I mean, it's something you kind of dance with.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because for me too, even though after having certain horrible situations happen, and giving up on the world, and then trying to reclaim that inner power, there is a positive and a negative that comes with it. One is the reclaiming it, and the other one is the underlying doubt that seems to keep surfacing and trying to attack me and tell me I'm not good. And like you say, it becomes a dance. Oh, I see, this is coming again. Okay, let me feel it. Let me experience it for what it is without reacting. And it's like a cultivation of getting to trust that, yes, I am capable. Yes, I can do this, and trust myself.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, like again, it's not something that you 100% cure,
Right.
And learning to acknowledge that it's there, and not ignore that it's there, but acknowledge that it's there, and to work with it and to keep moving forward anyway.
Right. But wouldn't you say, on the positive side, for what I see, for me at least, is that I have a tremendously enormous BS detector. So,
Yeah. Oh my God,
right? Because
Yeah.
after going through one of those life experiences that throw you off like that, then you tend to, like, the doubt is also comes into the good moments where you question, wait a minute, what's happening here? What's really happening here? And I think that's key to yoga, is even in the Yoga Sutras, that power of discerning what is real to what is not real.
So true. I mean, that's so funny you bring that up because, yeah, I definitely have a BS detector that
Yeah.
yeah, it can really set off an alarm. in the times that I, yeah,
Yeah.
have several, just with reading or interactions with other people or whatnot. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in the world we live now. I wrote recently a post, The Guru is Dead. There have been so many reports of men in charge of yoga that become cult and do sexual things for students or things like that. I think it's so important to remain so grounded when you start a yoga practice and not give your power away. Because it's such a vulnerable position to put if you start putting, say, a teacher on a pedestal, and not realizing we're all the same. We're all here to learn, and someone may have more experience than others, but that doesn't make them human gods or things like that.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with this. Yeah, staying grounded is highly important, I think, for yoga teachers, for yoga practitioners. Um, that is one thing that I really take seriously is, a role as having the role as a teacher. You should never take advantage of the vulnerability of students. That that is something that I find very important. Um, and even stories you hear or even experiences that I have had, I really don't have any tolerance for it.
Right. You were kicked out of a 200-hour yoga teacher training in the United States.
Yeah, I was.
What happened? I'm dying to know.
Oh my God, you're really opening up a can of worms.
It's just it made me curious because I know you're a grounded, serious practitioner, so something funny must have happened.
Well, okay, what's interesting about this situation is because, one reason why I went into teaching was I didn't have like any huge ambitions with teaching. I loved being a student. I just loved being a practitioner. And even if I were to stop teaching tomorrow, I would still be continuing on doing this practice. And so, in the community that I was in, I was practicing at home. I would also take classes too, and I was actually asked to start teaching just from my own. Just people kind of saw that, oh, this girl's quite serious, da 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 da, and at this particular studio, they actually offered me a job first before I even did their training.
Wow.
So yeah, so I was already teaching there, and so I did their training, and I wasn't so into it, to be honest with you, from the beginning, because I noticed that they accepted just anyone. Like, I was like, what's this? Like, oh, I've practiced for 6 months, and now I'm doing a training to be a teacher. And I was like, that's strange. To me, I always felt like, oh, there should be a body of, years of teaching before
Right.
embarking on, even thinking about being a teacher.
Like
So
with anything, like you wouldn't think of start teaching how to play the piano after practicing for a month.
exactly. That's such a great, example, because so I was a little bit skeptical going into it, but then I was like, okay, I'm part of this organization. Let me just, play my part and try to get something out of it. But what we were, and also I was kind of they had two different arms. They had a hatha arm, and then they had also a Ashtanga arm. So I was obviously in the Ashtanga. And so what we were being trained essentially to do is to teach all of primary series to students within 10 weeks or something.
Wow.
Once a week. Like it was. So,
Once a week, no matter what age, no matter what.
yeah. And I actually started to question this. I was like, this is crazy.
Right.
Like,
It really is crazy. I mean, there are postures there in the primary series that once a week in a couple of weeks not going to cut it. I know it didn't for me.
yeah. And I just didn't like, I just didn't like this approach. I didn't feel that it was right for students. And what I noticed at this particular place is that they would do this 10-week course, and it got really people excited about the practice, and it kind of hooked people. Oh, I'm learning this hard practice. I'm learning the whole sequence. And then they would finish the course, and then they would be really excited, and they would kind of do the practice for another month or two, and then they would just poop out. And
Of
then
course.
you would see that they wouldn't follow through. And then I noticed they would do another course, and then a new crop of people would come in, and they were super excited. And I was just kind of making the point, like, this is not sustainable.
Right.
It's not teaching people the foundation to like have a sustainable practice. And where I kind of went wrong, maybe I should have been more tactful to designer of the program, because it was almost like I was calling her baby ugly, because she really loved this way of doing this course. And so pretty much she kind of cut me off and just was like, you're being negative, and you're not in line with what our vision is, and blah, 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 blah. So she actually, had me exit the program, but not only that, she took away my teaching job too.
Right, which is silly and is unfortunate, but I think this is a perfect example of you having a tremendous BS detector. Like, you knew throughout your years of practice, this is not sustainable. It was just that simple. And I commend you in your ability to question, because many times people come to yoga and they think that they're not allowed to question things, or because in the Indian tradition maybe Indians never question teachers, but that's not the case with us in the US. And as we grow up as a species, I think of course we need to question everything. How we can't follow blind advice. So that was very interesting that happened to you.
Yeah, and it was funny because I kind of stood alone in that too, because I had other community of practitioners around me, and they were just I was a little bit kind of strucken out of that group too for a little bit. Now, some of those individuals, we've come back around to be friends, but it was really interesting to kind of stand your ground on something, but then also to kind of lose some backing from people who you kind of felt like were your friends. But, they felt like, ooh, I don't want to make waves. I don't want to. But, I think for all of us, there's times where we have to really like kind of speak out for what we feel is right.
Of course.
Maybe I could have been more tactful. I don't know. Maybe I could have.
Well, you can't change the past, and you were going with your heart, and clearly, I agree with you. I think it's even dangerous to try to do once a week a primary series in a couple of weeks. Yeah. When you know in your bones that what you're saying is true, then I think this is the part of the new Laruga, and I would say the part of the new me too. I only want to interview the teachers that I know go with the truth, that use the force, for example. So it's kind of growing up as teachers too, realizing what works and what just doesn't, because you have the experience.
Yeah, I agree.
And so then, when or how did I'm like curious, how do you get to Stockholm? Why did you meet your boyfriend within this time, or what happened?
Yeah, so I met my boyfriend in 2009, and
me too.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Like a magical year. And actually I met him really early in the 2009.
Me too.
Oh, wow.
In April. What month did you meet him?
In January.
Oh, that's even earlier.
Yeah. So, I did go through, previous to meeting David, I had some other turmoil happening just in my life, because also I noticed when it came to choosing boyfriends, partners, or whatever, I wasn't choosing the right people.
Oh, really? That's the story of my life.
I mean, and even I can see it in my past, like I even had like, I don't even know if I should even go into all this, but like even I've seen like where I've been propositioned by guys that were really good, do you know? And for some reason I was like, you know, I was just, where I look back, I was like, wow, you were blind. But anyway, you know, I don't know how to, but you know, you live and learn, no big deal. But so, you know, when I met David, it was really, it was just like I consciously was kind of, I felt myself getting caught up in a certain energy.
Hmm.
And I consciously kind of told myself, I was like, you know, I really just want to choose different.
Mm.
I want to open my eyes. And it was like I just even kind of told myself this, Laruga, open your eyes to something broader, something bigger, a different energy. And and actually, when I went to Mysore that year, I was really kind of like in my mind thinking, I really want to just lay low. I don't want to socialize too much.
Mm.
I'm not here to look for anything. So actually, the fact that I met David during that time was kind of a surprise.
I find it very interesting because in at that time for me too, I was so into having my own fun and loving myself, and I think it's that moment when it clicks, when you're the Laruga that was after, or the me that was after, you know, dealing with my insecurities but happy within myself, that you finally attract someone who is in the same place, someone who is solid, rounded, interesting, and real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing about, I will have to say about meeting David is that he is 100% real.
Mm.
And there's like, I, you know, he's one of the few people I've met that when he's angry, he's really angry and he doesn't shy away from that emotion.
Hmm.
When he loves and he really loves, he doesn't shy away from it. He's not insecure about sharing that a part of him. When he's sad, he's really sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there, you know, I haven't met so many people who are so free with the emotions that they feel and so real about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I really respect about him. And at the same time, there's a really big heart behind all of that.
Right.
So that's the thing that I really appreciated about him, and still do, that I really respect,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of allows me also to be more free with my emotions, especially having a background where I felt a little bit I had to suppress a lot of things that I truly felt.
Right.
So that's been so healing for me to have a space with someone where, you know, I can feel all of these things and express the things that I feel and feel safe.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. That's so important. Like it gives you the sort of like the space to become more and more of yourself. I think
Yeah.
that's the mark of a true relationship, and you probably give him also the space to be more of what he is, and respect what he is, and that sounds beautiful. Sounds really, really beautiful. Now, is David from Stockholm?
Yeah, he was born in Stockholm. And then there was a part of his young life he was raised in Dalarna, which is an area north of Stockholm, so further north in Sweden.
Mm.
And then, yeah, he has an interesting story. So at the age of 15, he moved away from home
Wow.
and he went back to Stockholm. And he was living on his own ever since the age of 15.
Hmm.
And he entered the ballet academy. And he was so he was here dancing at a very young age. And even when I tell some people this story who are adults and they have children, they're like, my 15-year-old isn't going anywhere. Uh,
Yeah, that's impressive that he knew what he wanted, that he knew expressing through the body was his thing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and there was many reasons why, you know, he left too. I mean, he had some challenges in his young life as well, and at that point of his life, dance was a great outlet for him. So yeah, that's what he explored at the age of 15 and living on his own.
That's
So
very impressive. I'm very impressed with people who are like below high school, finishing high school, that choose themselves, kind of, so to speak, that just sort of take life on their own terms. It always impresses me.
yeah, yeah, it impressed me too because I don't think I could have done that either.
And so you moved, I guess, with him and into teaching here in Sweden.
Yeah, so we met in 2009 and I was, yeah, so we were in Mysore and I was there for 3 months and he was there for two. And so there was a time when, what's interesting is like when you meet people in Mysore, it's like you really get to know people super well because it's like you don't have the day-to-day life
Yeah, there's
necessarily.
nothing to do, and you're exhausted after that enormous practice you do in the morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much time to like have like long conversations,
Right.
really get to know people, like that you really can indulge in that maybe, you're on a more of a time crunch in your day-to-day life at home. And so, we really got to know each other well and we when it was time for him to leave, we were like, okay, like let's really explore where this relationship can go.
Mm.
And so he left, and we stayed in touch while I was here for a month, or in Mysore, India, for a month. And then we decided that after the end of my stay in Mysore, that I would go to Stockholm because what was important for David, and also what became important for me, was that we wanted to know each other outside of that bubble.
Right.
So, because it's different.
Oh yes, absolutely. Completely different world. Once you leave Mysore, yeah, then the real world hits.
Yeah. And so we planned on me going to Stockholm for about a month, and I ended up staying for 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it went really well. I mean, the one thing that was kind of funny is that because I arrived like in April, and actually Stockholm had like the best weather ever that whole spring.
Right.
That kind of hooked me because that's not really the case here all the
Yeah. That it must be horrible then, like when it's all is it dark all winter long?
Yeah, it's quite dark in the winter. So at the peak, probably the sun goes down around 3 o'clock.
Wow.
But during the thick of winter, the sun never goes high on the horizon. It's always kind of low.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it's an adjustment. It's definitely an adjustment. But then you have the opposite in the spring and summer, where it's very bright. There's a lot of light, and the
Mm.
sun is up later, much later in the evening. So, but yeah, when I came to Stockholm, we, everything flowed really well,
Hmm.
and then at the end of my stay, because I stayed for the end of how much I was allowed to stay.
Right.
You get an entry visa for 3 months, and so we decided, okay, let's explore me moving to Stockholm.
Mm-hmm.
So we did all the steps and the things that were required for me to move here, and so I had to leave Stockholm. I went back to the U.S. and we started the process of the application because I had to do it outside of Sweden,
Ah.
and everything flowed really well. And then I ended up moving November of 2009. I moved.
I for the winter.
Yeah, I know, right? And actually, Swedes will say that November is like one of the worst months
Ay,
ever
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in Sweden. So, yeah, I
But you
moved.
had love to compensate at
Yeah,
least.
that made a huge difference because I was kind of in my own, like I was in a different reality space, so I wasn't thinking about the weather so much.
Right.
So, yeah.
And you've been there ever since, so you have adjusted to it.
Yeah, so I've been here for about 5.5 years now, and I would say the first year and a half, 2 years, it was like everything was really new.
Mm.
Then it was like I really had to settle into it. And that was an adjustment because the darkness does have an effect on me.
On
The
everyone, I think.
Oh yeah, and the climate too is really had an effect on me. So it's still, I've had to find a new balancing point for myself here, which has been a challenge. And that goes back to some of the things I was telling you about of suffering from exhaustion. Because one thing I had to keep in mind with is my vitamin D levels, because I have darker skin. That's one reason why you can why Swedes are fair is
Mm.
because they have to be like
Right. They have to
the
absorb. They have to absorb vitamin D as much as possible.
Yeah, so I had to really find a new balancing point. And one thing that's interesting coming here is like, if you've studied Ayurveda, which I'm sure you've had, like my vata really increased living in this climate.
So that means you were like trying to run around a lot, sort of aimlessly, and
Well, not really that, but I felt I had to, with my diet and so many things, I have to find ways to stay really grounded. I get
mm,
really cold. Um, I have to stay really warm. I found with the vata increase, like more space, like feeling more spacey in mind, where I didn't, even though in Columbus, Ohio, where I was living previously, we have winter every year and all those things. It's the thing too, there's more humidity. In Stockholm, even though there's water everywhere, it's very dry. So the dry and cold is like death to someone that has vata in them.
oh, yeah, I don't think I could survive there. Yeah, and I am definitely Vata oriented.
Yeah. So this was something that was a challenge, and I still am trying to tweak things to really find balance with thriving in this climate.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Laruga, it's interesting to me that we've been talking for probably about 50 minutes and there hasn't been one mention of an asana or a posture, and how much of yoga really has to do with the internal process is what impresses me in talking to you. All of the internal shifts, finding the places where you've been hurt, dealing with the doubts, finding your center, finding a relationship through that, adjusting to new places, and how much of yoga is outside of the mat.
Oh my God. Like it's all internal.
Yes.
I mean, all of it. Um, you know, uh, that's all that it is. Um,
Because there's so much emphasis on yoga, I find, being, about doing the pretty postures, which please go to larugayoga.com if you want to be absolutely impressed by this woman. I mean, your photographs are beautiful, the postures that you get on are beautiful, but really this is what it comes down to is how do we deal with daily life with help from the practice and how it turns us within.
oh yeah. And the thing that's interesting with Ashtanga yoga practice is, I mean, that I can attest to is it just keeps things so real. Like if you're willing to really look at yourself, I mean, it keeps you so honest with yourself.
Right.
I think, I definitely know what my weak spots are. And sometimes, yeah, I will, dig my head into the sand. But then when you keep doing this practice, it's like, what are you doing, Laruga? It's like, it's constantly forces me to be like, get real, get real.
Right.
And
That's the slogan of the yoga podcast, by the way, is keeping it real.
oh,
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, and I think it's true because the thing is you have no out. The practice happens 6 times a week, no Saturdays, no Mondays. That's it. And so it puts this mirror in front of you, like why didn't you, or what happened today, or what are you doing? Like it gets you really real.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, and there's something about showing up daily. There's something about how the practice really pushes, our dark spots to the surface for us to really look at. And in that way, it's quite an edgy practice because, you can't ignore that mental aspect. You can't ignore that internal aspect in this practice. I mean, I guess you could, but I find that that part is what's so interesting, and that part is what makes it so challenging. And I've definitely had my highs and lows in the practice, like mentally, physically, emotionally, like so
Mhm.
many things happening. I always feel like I'm in some type of process
Yes,
too.
yes. And there's always something hurting somewhere.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I
And
I find what you said there so true. I had in practicing dropping back, I don't drop back all the way to the floor, but I use the wall and coming back up. A teacher once pointed out to me that as I was coming up, I was doing this dramatic sort of like kind of thing, and he said to me, that's just drama. You can come up on an inhale, and it was a mental thing. It's as if I was pre-programmed to come out as if I had been drowning or something.
hmm,
And it goes to your point that it challenges from the body. It begins to challenge the mind. What's that about?
yes, yes. I mean, that's you know, bringing the unconscious conscious.
Right, exactly.
And I find that this practice has a way of really doing that. In it brings up all these things, and our mind is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
The ego is so complex, and I feel with this the daily steadiness of the practice, just the nature of the way that we're kind of guided through the practice. It really like kind of forces us to look at all these things, and um, and sometimes in the process you feel like, oh my gosh, is it getting better or worse?
Right. Yeah.
All these things arise within you, and then you feel the cycles within the cycles. I mean, there's been times I've I feel like I had healed a lot, but then all of a sudden there's a cycle of just really feeling a lot of grief for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, and letting that just wash over me, letting that just be, letting that release, and then I've also had these periods of grace where it's like I feel like every time I've come to my mat, it just feels so joyful.
Yeah,
But
those are nice.
those are nice. And then it's like you can't be too attached to that either.
Yeah,
It's
it does
then
go away. I know what you mean.
you enjoy it and you're so thankful for it, and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And then sometimes and then you enter into a cycle where it's like some deep work has to be done. So
Yeah.
you, there's something about this practice too that just makes me feel alive. I mean, you feel this rise and fall of all these things that are working in the psyche, and it's like, and we're leaning into it. We're
Right.
not we're not trying to numb ourselves. We're not trying to ignore it. We're actually leaning into it, and it's not always easy. But gosh, it really brings a sense of aliveness within us,
Yes.
which I think is beautiful. And I see it in the yogis that I meet, or even practitioners who've been doing it for much longer than I have, and other practitioners and teachers that I know in the community. It's a beautiful thing. It's like there's this sense of aliveness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. So I would like to ask you a question that's a bit deep. So I'm going to go deep on you. Um, if
okay.
yeah, throughout all these years of practicing, teaching, writing, because you're a writer as well, what would you say is one thing that took you a long time to understand? There may be many, but if you can point to one that you would like to share.
Took me a long time to understand. As far as like just the philosophical aspects, or
It could be philosophical, it could be about asana, it could be about anything that pops into your mind that you say, "Oh, gee, yeah, it was hard to really see these or to understand that."
oh my gosh, that's a hard one to pinpoint. Yeah, because yeah, that's a hard one to pinpoint for me. because I mean, I definitely feel this sense that there's still so much to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know if I can even claim that I understand much now. I don't know if I can even claim that.
That's a very honest answer because I would have to say I'm in the same boat. I realize every day how little I know. I mean, I know nothing about everything.
I would have to agree. And the thing, what's interesting because, you know, I feel blessed to be asked to like travel and teach too. And I, every time I, before I teach, there's almost a sense of terror. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
almost like, and there's that doubt too, like, well, what do I know? Like, what can I really give these people? What can I, and then and then it's like, I kind of have this moment where I just have to let go
Mm-hmm.
and just share the experience that I've held and just um, to just open myself up and allow whatever guidance that can pass through me to allow that to pass through.
Right.
And that's really the standpoint of how I teach. And granted, I still continue to study and read and reflect, but you know, there's just been times where I'm like, what am I going to say? How am I going to approach this? And then it's like, I just open myself up for this higher wisdom to take place. And, um, and that part to me is so mysterious.
Yes.
I don't even, I can't even, it's like, it's a mystery to me. But at the same time, it's something that like just humbles my heart.
Right.
And this, uh, this part of like feeling this connection to my heart, to feeling this higher sense of power or wisdom that's beyond me, that's bigger than me. That's something that I continue to, or that I desire to explore. And
I love how you put that. In doing this podcast, I get terrified too. I mean, I've seen you in Mysore probably 3 4 times, and we've said hello, but we've never talked. So when I interview a teacher like you, I am also petrified, and it's new, this thing about, okay, I'm gonna trust that the right words will come, and the same in teaching, as you're saying, that moment of opening and trusting a higher source is so exciting and great at the same time, and curious, and I love how you put that.
I just can't think of anything greater. I think, and the thing that I've realized is I can collect so much knowledge in my head, but if I don't feel the connection in my heart, then what does it really mean and what is it really for? Um, and that's what I continue to want to explore and to feel this sense of realness and authenticity in every moment, especially when I connect with other people, with students. Um, that and I know that I don't always get it right, and there might be times that I might be distracted, but this is something that is really important for me. This really taking things to my heart there's a part of us that recognizes this higher wisdom,
Right.
that it's already within us. And so, and this is where, again, I think for both of us is that trust, having that sense of doubt at times, but then also trusting. But when I give it up to this higher power, it just seems like it just never fails.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
I think this interview is proof of it. I am so grateful we had this conversation, Laruga. Do you have any book projects coming up, or CDs or DVDs or anything like that?
oh gosh. So, um, yeah, I haven't propositioned to to write something, but it took me a while to really find what my vision was
Mm-hmm.
for this. So it's something that I'll be working on. Other than that, I'm going to be exploring doing some like online classes type
Oh,
of thing. So, you know, DVDs are a little bit like now because like technology is just everything's changing so quickly.
that's true.
So it's kind of like I'm exploring a project with a friend of mine to do something that will be offered online. So
Okay.
this is something that's very much in the beginning stages. And all this stuff is really new to me. So, and also scary at the
Yeah.
same time. So yeah, like, so these are things that I'm excited to be working on, in the next few months. So
That's
there's
wonderful.
definitely things on the horizon. So
That's wonderful. So I hope that we can have you back when you have something like that. Perhaps we can talk about that. But in the meantime, if you want to find Laruga, is Laruga yoga.com for her international workshops or her regular classes. And I hope that we get to talk very soon again. I'm very grateful, Laruga, that you came in.
yeah, this was so wonderful, Claudia. I definitely hope we can do it again. I really enjoyed our talk. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, Laruga.
Bye.
Bye.
That's all for the Yoga Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in iTunes and visit theyogapodcast.com for more interviews. Until next time, keep it real.